I received a request to talk about the topic of balancing spirituality and sexuality, and the person who asked about it said that in the past he had been very sexually oriented but not very spiritually oriented, and is trying to become more quiet and live a more peaceful spiritual life, if I can paraphrase. And so, and having some difficulty finding balance with those things. And I feel as though the areas of spirituality and sexuality don't have to be at odds with each other. They can work together. But it's a matter of making sure that you are solid enough in your identity as a spiritual being to not lose yourself in sexuality, because sex is something that can be used by the ego to create confusion about who you are. And the reason that this is such a powerful drug is that it doesn't just work on the level of, pleasure like most drugs. There is a biological component to it that has to do with the way we're programmed to create life. And there's a, sociological component to it, that there's a strong influence that says if you're having sex, then you're a more important and more interesting and more powerful person than if you're not. And there's an emotional component too, the desire for closeness, tenderness, touch, the things that can be received in a sexual relationship and so forth. So there's so many levels to it that it can really be a powerful experience that can make you fixated upon it. And there's a theory called sociobiological theory that says sex is basically the thing that motivates all of our choices, the kind of job that we do, the decisions we make throughout our day, that it all comes back to our programming that we have within us that is about making sure that we have offspring and keeping life alive. So I wrote about this in my book, A Fresh Look at Being Human. The subtitle is Evolving into Spirit Identification. And I believe that we have a tendency towards this sociobiological drive motivating us, but it's not our destiny. And the only way we move out of it is through identifying as a spiritual being. And that does not mean rejecting sexuality. It just means it's not the only thing you're here to do. If you start seeing that you're here to attain peace, then you start to realize that it's not just about getting brief glimpses of peace through sexual release, because part of the appeal of orgasm is not thinking during that time, getting a break from your thoughts. But the world rushes back in pretty quickly if you have a conflicted mind. So even if you're having sex a lot, like if you're having sex an hour every day, the majority of your life is still spent just with yourself in terms of your mind and not being able to run away from how you're feeling. So you can look at your spiritual development as an opportunity to feel good all the time, to be able to basically get away from the kind of obsessive thinking and confusing, conflicted relationships that people bring into their life when they're looking to run away from their feelings through constantly being busy and constantly being distracted, letting go of all of these external kind of things for a bit to find yourself. And then you'll find that physical attraction is just not enough to motivate you sexually, and that biological component of yourself might be frustrated by that. Like you might feel like, oh man, before I was into the spiritual practice stuff, I was, getting laid all the time, and just there was so much thrill and excitement. And this is all part of the transition that we have to go through. from identifying as a body to identifying as a spirit, you will soon find yourself on the path feeling as though attraction on that physical level is not going to be enough. And you might try to make it enough, but there will quickly be drama and conflict, and things won't work because you want on a deeper level to be connected on all levels. And there are a lot of religious people, but they're, for the most part, not necessarily people who've done a lot of work on themselves in terms of personal growth and attaining a peaceful mind. And when it comes down to it, there aren't a lot of people who are truly spiritually committed and have done much work on themselves. So that limits the playing field, so to speak, in terms of who you're going to find appealing to be with. And in that aloneness, you can find yourself highly conflicted because you want companionship, you want sexual closeness, you want intimacy, but it's not happening. And that can be uncomfortable. But you don't have to turn it into suffering if you don't obsess upon that. You could, use some cognitive psychology and basically say, well, I would prefer to have a close partner with who I'm compatible and all that, but I'm okay without it, and it is just a preference. It's not a need. Your body will try to convince you that it's a need. It'll try to convince you even to settle and to compromise who you really enjoy being around just to have sex. But if you can look at your aloneness as an opportunity instead of as like a punishment, then it can become a chance to really develop your own sense of worth and self-love and peace, and develop a relationship with yourself that is so strong and deep that you will not be shaken up when you enter a sexual relationship, when that does arise in your life. If you are still in the crossroads in terms of your identity, of wanting to fit into the world and just basically being a biologically driven kind of creature fitting into society versus wanting to be somebody who is more deeply at peace and comfortable in your own skin, then there may be temptations to feel alone, frustrated, just in conflict quite a bit. But if you let go more and more of the worldly kind of desires, that doesn't mean that you will not have sex again. It means that you will be able to truly have a healthy sexual relationship with another person if you've done enough work on yourself and if you are selective in your process of choosing who you want to be with. Because it is amazing how completely different it is when you're on the spiritual path. Like, I really have seen in myself an incredible difference. And it all started around 13 years ago when I got really interested in spirituality, the time period that I considered my spiritual awakening. Before that, I look back now and I can't believe who I was able to be intimate with. It's just incredible. Because now, some of those people that I was drawn to would just feel so abrasive and annoying that I wouldn't want to be around them. Whatever the kind of physical payoff is. And since then, I just find myself being, more and more sensitive to energy, and less sexual experiences have unfolded, but there's also been so much less drama in my life. And I think that's the trade-off. If you are not making conscious choices about who you want to be with intimately, you're gonna have drama in your life. And so a lot of people, I think, who are on the spiritual path, they feel alone and they feel like they're struggling with loneliness and a desire to find a compatible partner and so forth. But that is a big part of the necessary struggle to transition out of the normal, everyday, matrixy kind of world into a deeper state of peace. And you can roll with it or you can fight against it, but I believe that there's very few people who have been able to achieve a true state of peace without moving through the struggle. And the struggle is saying, I am no longer going to be led around by my various desires. I'm going to be okay with what is. I'm not going to fight and struggle and force my way into a life situation that is supposedly ideal to my ego. I'm going to be with what is, still making changes when guided to do so, but not always fighting against life. And this peacefulness, you actually change your vibration on a core level. And I know people talk about good vibes on a kind of level of metaphor, but the more we find out about quantum physics and string theory, that is what it all comes down to. The vibrations of these little tiny strings of energy are changing physical form. So I believe it's all interconnected, and in terms of our physical, our emotional, and spiritual manifestation. And when we change our vibration and become more committed and clear in terms of our spirit identification, that doesn't mean eternal celibacy for everybody. Some people might choose that or be drawn to that kind of experience. But when you are, going to be connected with somebody intimately, it's going to be somebody who has also done some work. And even though it's not that many people, percentage-wise, there still are people that are doing the work out there. And they're going to want to be partnered up as well and, be sharing with another person. But they may be doing the work too. And you won't meet that person until you've done the work that you have to do. And it's not so much taking a certain period of time, so much as it is doing whatever needs to be done. And when we fight against what needs to be done on a level of our spiritual and personal growth, then we can delay the time in terms of when we will be ready for another relationship. Whereas if we just surrender and do what we need to do without feeling so attached to sexuality and partnership, then we paradoxically are more likely to attract a healthy connection than if we force it and obsess upon it. In other words, we have to let go of the desire and expectation, because that is part of the ego's illusion that says your life will be ready, your life will be better when you are in this situation. And on that biological level, it's often your life will be better when you are in a sexual relationship, as opposed to, just working on your individual self. And so any kind of an illusion is an affront to your self-development. And when you can just say, okay, I can be completely at peace with things as they are now, then that shows that you've reached a level where you can probably be in a relationship without losing yourself. Because even though your biological drive says that a sexual relationship is always better, that's not really the case. A lot of times relationships are about developing yourself and being pushed and challenged to grow in various ways. So there's growth opportunities, and if those are not going well in terms of the ease of the lessons or resistance to lessons, there can be suffering there too. So that's why a lot of times, you have the cliche of the people in relationships wishing they were single and the freedom that brings, and the people who are single wishing they were in relationships because of the intimacy and contact that brings. But it's the whole grass is always greener thing, and that's what the ego always wants within us, is to be eternally discontent. If we are content, then the ego has lost its struggle to preserve itself and to remain the primary motivator in our identity. So let go and just be with what is and stop fighting